What's good, y'all? Back with another video. Now today we're going to be reacting to Thomas Sowell and Jordan Peterson on why Marxism is so appealing. I'm going to be real. I'm definitely a fan of Jordan Peterson. Definitely like Jordan Peterson's work. Thomas Sowell, I'm like halfway a fan, halfway not. I love his opinion. I definitely critique him a lot on this page, and I know y'all be seeing it. I see all in the comments. You know what I'm saying? You know, but like I like Thomas Sowell. I do like that he's an intellectual for sure. I just think he has a difference of opinion on how I see the world. But I definitely like Jordan Peterson and admire Jordan Peterson's opinion. So yeah, y'all subscribe. Please subscribe. Actually, subscribe. I'm gonna stop telling y'all just subscribe. I gotta ask y'all. Subscribe to the channel, you know, if you want to. And I want you to though. I want you to come in. I want you to be part of the family. You know what I mean? Be part of the family. And let's hop right into the reaction, because you know how I like to do. Just get straight to the point.
Why is it, do you think that, here we go, that Marxism is such a rooted ideology compared to things like classical liberalism or all of these other ideologies that we see? Like, this thing's been around since the mid-1800s, and it's taken over almost everything, especially college.
I love Jordan Peterson's poise. I don't know, like I don't know. It's just he's just calmly listening to the. I don't know. It's just I just had to point that out because the way he observes and articulates things is very, very dope. I love it. I love it about Jordan Peterson. Definitely somebody I admire.
Campuses. Why do you think that is?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think the first communists, let's say, the Russians, let's say, for the sake of argument, they were much less reprehensible philosophically than today's Marxists. And the reason for that was, well, they had a utopian vision, and not that that's necessarily a good thing, but they didn't necessarily know that it was a bad thing.
Behold the branch ergonomic chair, a symbiotic companion for the working human.
Right. And so, and the old aristocratic European structure was crumbling, and there'd been a terrible war, and, you know, the Tsarist regime was, well, compared to the communist regime, it was heaven on earth, but, you know, it had its problems. And so, even as Nietzsche said, you know, that communism would be worth it as an experiment, but he also said, and this was in Will to Power, that hundreds of millions of people would die as a consequence, which is one of the most remarkable prophecies, I think, that have ever been uttered by anyone ever. Okay, so it's attractive, it's utopian, but then there's the dark side of it, right? Which means everyone who has more than you got it by stealing it from you. And
that's not the question they asked, though, Jordan Peterson. The question that they asked you was, why is it so appealing? Why does it appeal to people? You're answering the bad side of it. That's another thing. I can't stay in these bad faith arguments sometimes, man. And I told you I admire Jordan Peterson, but these bad faith arguments sometimes. Why is it appealing to people? Answer that question. We're going to keep going, and hopefully he answers that question.
That it really appeals to the Cain-like element of the human spirit, right? Everyone who has more than me got it in a manner that was corrupt, and that justifies not only my envy, but my actions to level the field, so to speak, you know, and to look virtuous while doing it. And so there's a tremendous philosophy of resentment that I think is driven now also by a very pathological anti-human ethos that you also see at the base of much of the environmentalist movement. Like, it's not like we're not doing some stupid things to the planet. Like what we're doing to the oceans, for example, is reprehensible beyond comprehension. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I've heard environmentalists state quite straightforwardly that human beings are a cancer on the planet. It's like, if someone says that to you, you know, you should move away from that person very, very quickly, because that statement is genocidal in its spiritual origin. And
I agree with that. You shouldn't make statements like that. I guess he said what it appeals to is our belief that the elites are all bad, and that we are trying to overthrow the elites. I guess that's what he tries to. I guess that's what he's saying that it appeals to. No, it appeals to the corruption in capitalism. That's what it appeals to. It appeals to people who've been laid off their jobs and don't understand why. It appeals to people who have been laid off jobs that have moved to Mexico. It appeals to kids who can't afford their college tuition. It appeals to the fact that 99% of the population is not doing as good as the 1%. That's what it appeals to. It appeals to social change, reform, like how hospital bills are $1,000 just for you to go get a hospital. Just to go to the hospital, it's expensive. Some people don't even go to the hospital because they can't afford it. Some people get no dental, no eye care, no anything like that because they can't afford these things. That's what socialism is appealing to. That's what it's appealing to. The people are trying to find solutions to that problem, and them trying to find those solutions is causing them to lean towards socialism. Straightforward. I'll give him the answer. Hopefully he says what I just said, because that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what every person I've ever met who is a socialist says.
And so I think there's a whole cluster of unexamined motives of resentment that primarily drive the resurgence of the Marxism. But it's also a consequence of the poor, the biased education that our children receive. You know, they know a bit about the Second World War and about the Nazis, but they don't know anything about what happened in the Soviet Union and China. Like often in universities, and I teach a personality course, it's like that's not where you should be learning about the 6 million Ukrainians who died of starvation in the 1930s, but most of my students have never heard of any of that. It's like, what the hell? We fought a whole Cold War about that. We damn near annihilated the planet because of it. And all of a sudden it's an inconvenient for the neo-Marxists to notice that the regimes of Stalin and Mao were brutal beyond comprehension. So how about if we don't talk about it, you know? So there's lots of corruption that's driving this, but a huge part of it is resentment. And like I think the worst emotions are resentment, the worst actions are resentment, deceit, and arrogance. And
before he goes on, I really want to drive the point home, right? Now, have you noticed when anyone critiques capitalism, they focus on the greed, the worst of the worst of the worst in the capitalists. And when anybody critiques socialism, they focus on the worst of the worst with the socialist, right? But however, though, the funny thing about socialism is that when they're critiquing socialism, half of the people that they consider socialist are not truly socialist by definition. Like, they're not truly socialist by definition. They're just not. Mao was not a socialist. He was a totalitarian government. Mao was definitely a totalitarian government. He believed in some socialist principles, but overall he believed in authoritarian government. I guess you could say communism is that. Communism can be that, but socialism, I don't think people understand the difference between communism and socialism. Stalin was a communist, right? People think. I'm gonna just let him go. I'm gonna let him go, and I'm gonna say something else again.
you get those three working together, boy, you got a force that you better be careful with.
Do you think it's dying off? Or
What's
going
that?
away? Do you think Marxism is dying off or going away at all? Or do you think it's getting stronger?
No.
I think that what's happened is that it's transmutated into this postmodernism and identity politics, which was really, really devious, and that was a consequence of the French intellectuals, mostly Derrida and Foucault. But it's not going away. What's happened instead is that it's taken a new strategic tack. And it's one that no one really envisioned. What it's doing is taking over the administration of mid-level bureaucracies everywhere.
That I agree with.
So it's not so much a threat at the highest level of political organization, but that isn't necessarily where much of the...
How do you get a small business loan? Whether you're looking for funding from a bank, a credit union, an online...
The power over individuals resides. It resides in these smaller political structures, sub-political structures, like school boards, for example, or in Canada right now, our law society in Ontario has made it mandatory for lawyers to produce a statement of principles that they provide a template for. They tell you what your damn statement of principles should be, and they're basically equity, diversity, diversity and inclusivity statements, and if you don't write out your statement of principles, declaiming your agreement with these principles and simultaneously, essentially admitting that you're a racist, then you don't get your license. So we're fighting it.
Oh, that sucks. Okay. That definitely sucks. That's stupid. That's pointless. I agree with him on that. I definitely do. That should be, but I don't, maybe I'm tripping, but I don't really think that's what Marx was trying to get people to get at. I don't think DEI and Marx I don't think they're the same. I don't. I say that. I know a lot of people who claim to be Marxists are components, like they believe in the DEI system, but I don't think that it was the same based on what Marx was writing about. He believed everybody in society should have some equality in it. And DEI is somewhat of diversity, inclusion. It's diversity, inclusion, and there's diversity, inclusion, and equity. I can't think of the diversity, inclusion, equity program, whatever. You know what I mean? And that's still somewhat of a segregation to a degree. It is. It is somewhat of a segregation to a degree. He didn't believe in any segregation. He He thought that everybody in society should work together to build the society as a collective, and that's how we reach our utopia. So let's keep going.
A big war about that right now in Ontario. We might even win. It looks like we might win. You never know. But it's also partly because ordinary people are too complacent about the mid-level bureaucrats who rule over them. You know, we're willing to allow those relatively small positions of power to be taken over by groups that are very good at doing that sort of thing. And we need to wake up to that because it's seriously not good. And it's very difficult to fight back against. So
You've also written that throughout your 20s...
Okay, so now we're on the Thomas Sowell. Okay, that was interesting. Let's go to Thomas Sowell now.
Were a Marxist. Yes. What did that to you?
Oh, he was a
Did
Marxist.
that share Harvard's work?
No, heavens, no. That was when I was 20 years old. That was when I first came across some stuff by Marx. And what he said seemed to explain the world around me. And one of the reasons is that, like many kids then and now, they don't really get any alternative explanation. And so it's like you have to have a candidate to be the candidate.
So what was... you grew up in Harlem. You went to Howard before going to Harvard.
Yeah.
So you're largely in a black world, an African-American world. When you say Marx explained the world around you, do you mean to say that he explained the world of segregation?
No. But for example, my first job was as a Western Union messenger. I was 16 years old. My first full-time job. And I used to, on some evenings, come home instead of taking the subway, which was a nickel in those days. I would splurge and take the Fifth Avenue bus, which was 15 cents. So I was feeling, you know.
You got a good tip.
Yeah. And it was, we'd start out from 23rd Street and go all the way up Fifth Avenue, past all the glittering places, and we would turn left at 57th Street and go out past more glittering places, including Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And then we'd turn up around Columbus Circle, up Broadway, and then out to Riverside Drive, all the fancy stuff there. And then at 135th Street, we'd come in off a viaduct, and immediately there'd be the tenements. And of course, this is where I lived. And I went, well, what is this? And Marx seemed to explain that.
Got it. So, what...
Huh? I don't believe he was a Marxist just off of what he just said. I don't believe he was a Marxist. I genuinely don't believe he was a Marxist. Off of what he did, that was your reasoning. Not you studied the book, you looked in society and saw issues in society. You studied the Communist Manifesto and you liked where Marx was going with it. Not you studied Marx's life and through studying Marx's life you came to some kind of conclusion. Nothing like that. That was the reason. Hey, you know, to each his own. You know what I mean? Everybody reaches whatever they reach, however they want to reach it in life. But let's keep going.
What converted you? You graduate from Harvard a Marxist. You remain a Marxist throughout your 20s, and you've written that you had a summer job in Washington.
I also want to say that I think it's very like, most people come out of Harvard don't end up Marxists. They end up capitalists. They genuinely do. Anyone can debate me on the comments on that. Most people who graduate from Harvard end up capitalists. You learn about macroeconomics. You don't learn about Marxist economic systems. You just don't like you don't learn how like I could prove it right now. Anybody in the comments want to hop in the comments and show me. Explain socialism. Explain it. Like explain socialism and explain how a system of economics would work with socialism. Explain Marxism and explain how a system of government would work with Marxism. Or economics will work with Marxism. Like most, you're told about these things throughout your life at random moments, but there weren't many classes, especially when I was in college, on anything that had to do with socialism or Marxism. That's why I think these guys are making that stuff up, where it's like all over the universities. I don't see it like that. I don't see it. Who knows? I could be wrong though.
In 1969.
1960.
1960, I beg your pardon, in 1960, that helped to, or that just changed your views on economics. Explain that.
I was still a Marxist after taking Milton Friedman's course. But one summer in the government was enough to...
How though? How? Like if you were learning economics through Milton Friedman, I don't think there's any way you could become a Marxist. But I don't know. You barely wasn't listening, but I don't think he was listening.
Let me say, the government is really not the answer. I mean, that is...
Milton Friedman didn't cure you, but the federal government did.
The federal government did. Never say the federal government doesn't do anything.
He didn't say cure. Facts.
So what was it about the job?
Well, my job was to study minimum wage setting in Puerto Rico. And of course, I discovered that as they kept raising the minimum...
Department of Labor, or
yes.
You're collecting statistics for something?
Yeah, and for a report. And I noticed that as they kept raising the minimum wage, the employment kept going down. And of course, economics was saying that was why, but there were two theories. The unions said that the reason it was going down was that there were hurricanes came through, a series of hurricanes during the time they collected the data, and that it destroyed the sugar cane in the field, so there was less required to be processed. And so the question is, which of those is right? And I thought, I'd been trained in Chicago, that if there are two different theories, there must be some factual thing that would be different, at least in principle. So I spent the whole summer trying to figure out how would I test this. And finally I came in one day and announced to the little group here in the office that I have it. That what we need are statistics on the amount of sugar cane standing in the field before the hurricane came through. And I'm waiting for the congratulations, and I can see looks of shock in the room, like this idiot has stumbled on something that will ruin us all. And I realized I was concerned as to whether this law was beneficial or not beneficial to low-income people. They were concerned because this law was providing 1/3 of the income of the U.S. Department of Labor. And once you begin to see that the government agencies have their own self-interest, quite aside from whatever they're theoretically supposed to be doing.
So they were behaving precisely as a neoclassical, precisely as Milton Friedman would have predicted. They were in pursuit of their own incentives.
That's right.
They were not trying to establish justice on the face of the earth. They were trying to hold on to pretty good jobs.
Yes.
Got it.
Interesting. I had to write that down. Hurricanes. That's interesting. That's really interesting. I'm gonna look into that. I really don't know. I don't know anything about that. I'm gonna look into that. That's definitely interesting. Thomas Sowell just really taught me something right there. I didn't know that was hurricanes that caused that. But I'll look into it. Let me look into it more. But y'all already know what to do. Appreciate y'all coming through. And like I said, y'all gotta subscribe, like, follow, do what y'all gotta do. Comment down below if you disagree with me. Love the disagreeing. Open up my channel to it. We don't block, ban, or censor anybody over on here, and we listen to everybody and what everybody's got to say. All right?